The wind had been building all afternoon, swirling over the plains like a restless spirit, and by evening it had grown into something fierce, tearing through the ranch with a ferocity no one could have imagined. The sky darkened, rolling clouds, thick and heavy, churning in unnatural patterns. Livestock huddled together, lowing in confusion, and the ranch hands scrambled to secure what they could. But nothing could hold back what was coming. The air roared, carrying debris and fear across the open fields, and within minutes the tornado struck, ripping the land apart as if it were paper. The ranch, once a place of routine and steady labor, became chaos. Barns splintered, fences bent and twisted, and the main house shook with every gust. Horses neighed in panic, cows stampeded, and the earth seemed to tremble beneath the immense force. Dust, hay, and broken timber flew through the air in a blur, stinging eyes and scratching skin. Amidst it all, the stallion, the pride of the ranch, strong, proud, and untamed, galloped against the wind, his hooves striking sparks from scattered stones, mane streaming like fire. No matter how fierce the storm, he refused to be driven back, a living symbol of endurance against nature's wrath. By the time the storm passed, the ranch lay in ruin. What had once been orderly pens and pastures were nothing more than scattered wreckage, the ground scarred with gouges from uprooted trees and shattered fences. Silence settled over the landscape, broken only by the groans of injured animals and the distant sound of loose boards shifting in the breeze. Dust hung in the air like a gray fog, and the sun, when it finally broke through, revealed devastation as far as the eye could see. Those who survived stood in stunned disbelief, surveying the wreckage, their hearts heavy with loss and uncertainty. Amid the destruction, the stallion had vanished. No one had seen where he went as the tornado tore through the ranch. Some feared the worst, imagining the proud creature battered and gone. Others whispered that he had ridden the wind, that the spirit of the storm itself had carried him to safety. But for 3 days he was nowhere to be found. The ranch workers combed the debris, calling his name, searching fields and nearby hills, yet only silence answered. The absence of the stallion left a hollow ache, for he had been more than a horse, he had been the heart of the ranch, a symbol of strength and hope. In the days following the storm, the survivors worked tirelessly, clearing debris, patching fences, and tending to injured animals. The smell of damp earth and splintered wood hung heavy in the air. Each task was a reminder of the tornado's power, a cruel force that had torn apart their livelihood in a single afternoon. Conversations were hushed, voices trembling as they shared what little news they had. The ranch felt smaller somehow, diminished by loss, and yet the people refused to give in to despair. They moved with purpose, motivated by stubborn determination and a faint hope that the stallion might still be found. Rumors began to spread, as they always do in tight-knit ranching communities. Some claimed to have seen a shadow of a horse moving along the hills in the distance. Others insisted the stallion had returned to the wild, carried off by instinct and the wind. Each report, no matter how vague, stirred a mix of anticipation and dread among those who had worked alongside him. The mystery of his disappearance added a new weight to the already heavy days, and every glance toward the horizon was filled with longing and tension. On the 3rd day after the tornado, a strange energy seemed to ripple across the ranch. Birds that had vanished returned to roost, cautious at first, then bolder as if sensing a shift in the land. A soft breeze stirred the wreckage, lifting dust in delicate spirals that hinted at movement beneath. And then, just as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, a sound carried across the fields low, deliberate and unmistakably the call of a horse. Heads turned, hearts quickened, and eyes searched the horizon. Could it be him? The stallion, alive, returning to claim what had been lost? The first glimpse was almost surreal. In the dim light, a shape appeared at the edge of the flattened pasture, moving with slow precision. The stallion's coat glinted against the sun's fading rays, a shimmer of strength and defiance. He had survived the storm, the same winds that had ripped apart barns and fences, and now he was returning not in panic but with purpose. His movements were deliberate, almost calculated, as if he understood the magnitude of what had happened and the work that lay ahead. Every step carried weight, and every glance from his dark eyes seemed to communicate a message beyond words. Those who watched were frozen, unsure whether to approach or remain still. The animals in the nearby pen sensed his presence, quieting as if they recognized him, and even the trees and scattered debris seemed to wait in suspended anticipation. The rancher felt a chill, not from the breeze but from the raw, undeniable presence of the stallion. He had always been a symbol of strength, but now, after surviving the tornado and disappearing for 3 days, the stallion seemed almost otherworldly, a figure of resilience, guiding them without speech, leading them toward a destiny none had yet seen. People whispered to each other, pointing, gesturing, hardly daring to breathe. How had he survived? Where had he been? What was he doing now, appearing suddenly as if nothing had changed? The rancher stepped forward slowly, boots crunching against broken boards, heart pounding. Every instinct told him to wait, to watch. A curiosity and a deep bond with the stallion compelled him onward. He had faced storms before, dealt with injury, and managed life on this land with patience and hard work, but this moment felt like something far greater than any challenge he had known. The air seemed to shift again, carrying a subtle tension, a prelude to something extraordinary. Dust swirled in the fading sunlight, and for a brief instant, it seemed as if the tornado's power still lingered in the land, echoing through broken trees and flattened fields. The stallion paused, ears flicking, muscles coiled like spring tension. Those watching could feel it, a quiet hum of anticipation as if the land itself held its breath. Whatever was about to happen, it was clear it would not be ordinary. The rancher's mind raced with questions. Had the stallion been searching for something, protecting something? Or had he simply survived against all odds, returning now as a living testament to the will to endure? The animals, too, seemed attentive, their movements synchronized with the stallion's, as though they were waiting for a signal, a command, or a guidance that only he could provide. The mystery of his actions became almost unbearable, tension wrapping tightly around the hearts of those who stood watching. No one dared approach too quickly. The stallion's presence demanded respect, a silent authority born of strength and experience. Yet there was something more, something unspoken, something that promised revelation. Every eye followed his movements, every breath was held, and the quiet stretched across the ranch like a living thing. For 3 days he had been absent, and now his return carried with it the weight of anticipation and the unknown. The barn, the fields, the splintered fences, they were all waiting for what came next. And then he moved again. Not in fear, not in flight, but with clear intent. Every hoof struck the ground with measured purpose, every muscle in his body rippled as he navigated the wreckage with care. It was as if he had a mission, a secret knowledge, and those watching could only guess what it might be. Eyes widened, breaths quickened, and even the children on the ranch fell silent, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. The stallion was no longer just a horse. He had become a living force of nature, a symbol of endurance and the unexpected ways life can respond to devastation. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the flattened landscape. Dust rose in thin spirals, carrying hints of movement in the distance. And then, at the very edge of the horizon, the rancher saw a small, unexpected glimmer, something that did not belong in the wreckage, something alive and precious. He could not be certain what it was, only that the stallion had led them here, and that whatever awaited was tied to the horse's return. His heart pounded, chest tight with anticipation, and the ranch hands exchanged glances filled with awe and confusion. No words were spoken, none were needed. The stallion had appeared when all hope seemed lost, guiding them toward an unknown truth, and the tension hung over the ranch like a living thing. Every movement, every sound, every shift in the air felt like part of a larger story that had been unfolding for years, hidden until this moment. The land itself seemed to respond, the debris shifting slightly, the animals watching with quiet intensity, and the rancher felt a thrill unlike anything he had known. 3 days after the tornado, the ranch had been torn apart. But as the stallion stood at the edge of the wreckage, eyes fixed on the horizon, the survivors realized that the storm had not destroyed everything. Something extraordinary was happening, something that none of them had anticipated, and the mystery of the stallion's actions promised to reveal truths that would change the ranch forever. The wind carried the scent of earth and hay, and the rancher felt the first true spark of hope in days. Yet the question remained, what exactly was the stallion leading them to? And what lay beyond the horizon, waiting for the first brave steps into the unknown? The ranch held its breath, and so did the people, as they prepared to follow the horse's lead, unsure of what they would find, but certain that the next moments would change everything. The rancher's boots sank slightly into the soft, churned-up earth as he followed the stallion across the flattened fields. Broken fences lay scattered like kindling, and pieces of the barn's roof jutted from the ground at odd angles. The wind had softened since the tornado passed, but the air still carried a restless energy, as if the land itself refused to settle. The stallion moved ahead with a calm confidence, ears flicking back occasionally to check if the humans were keeping pace. There was something about the way he walked, deliberate and measured, that suggested more than instinct. It was almost as if he knew the secrets hidden among the wreckage, and he intended to lead them there. The rancher glanced back at the others. The ranch hands and neighbors who had gathered were silent, their faces drawn with exhaustion and awe. 3 days of cleanup had left them weary, muscles sore, and hearts heavy, but no one dared speak. All attention was on the horse. Children clung to the edges of the group, their eyes wide, sensing something extraordinary. The rancher felt the same electricity in the air that had gripped him when he first spotted the stallion at the edge of the horizon. Whatever lay ahead, he knew, would change everything about the ranch and their understanding of the storm's aftermath. The landscape was a jigsaw of devastation. Trees had been uprooted, some split in half, their roots clawing at the sky like desperate hands. Hay bales lay scattered across the pasture, and the remnants of pens and gates were twisted metal and splintered wood. Yet beneath the destruction, signs of life persisted. A cow that had been missing since the tornado emerged from a cluster of trees, uninjured but wary. Birds returned, tentatively hopping along branches or the ground, their chirps soft but noticeable. Amid the ruin, the quiet persistence of life seemed deliberate, as if the land itself was holding its breath for what was to come. The rancher recalled the stallion's intensity during the tornado. He had seen the horse charge against the wind, refusing to be driven back, almost as if he were protecting something no one else could understand. He had never seen such determination in a horse, and now, with the storm long past, it became even more evident that the animal was not just a survivor but a guide. He followed closely, scanning the wreckage for any clue to what the stallion's focus might be. Each hoofprint left in the mud told a story. Each glance from the horse carried a quiet insistence that there was more to discover. As they reached a small rise in the land, the stallion paused and lifted his head, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. The rancher approached cautiously, heart racing. Something about the stillness of that moment made the ruined ranch feel almost alive. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the faint scent of smoke and damp earth, but also another, subtler aroma that the rancher could not immediately place. It was earthy, rich, and oddly sweet like life itself, waiting to be revealed. The stallion shifted his weight, pawing at the ground, and the rancher knew this was no ordinary stop. Whatever the horse had found, he had recognized it instantly. The group edged forward, curiosity and caution in equal measure. The rancher's mind raced with questions. Had the stallion discovered an injured animal hidden in the wreckage? Or was it something else, something perhaps left behind by the tornado that even human eyes had overlooked? The storm had torn through the ranch indiscriminately, leaving devastation in its wake, but the stallion's behavior suggested a focus, a purpose that was far beyond instinct alone. He had survived the storm with strength, and now he seemed intent on uncovering what had survived alongside him. Branches creaked overhead as the wind shifted again. The stallion's ears twitched, and he stepped lightly over debris, mane catching the fading sunlight. The rancher followed, noting every movement, every glance, trying to decipher the horse's unspoken message. They reached a shallow gully that had been partially filled with fallen boards and mud. The stallion stopped at its edge, lowering his head to nuzzle something just beyond sight. The rancher squinted, stepping closer, but the horse's body language suggested patience, a careful waiting. He was guarding whatever lay there, giving the humans a moment to adjust to the shock they were about to face. A soft whinny escaped from the stallion, low and deliberate. From the edge of the gully, the faintest movement caught the rancher's eye. At first he thought it might be a small animal trapped under debris, but then the outline grew clearer. A tiny foal, barely days old, shivering and muddy, peeked out from the wreckage. The stallion lowered his head, nudging it gently, encouraging it to rise. The rancher's chest tightened. The tornado had struck 3 days earlier, yet this little creature had survived in the ruins, hidden by instinct or perhaps by sheer luck. The stallion's actions, patient and protective, had saved its life. Other ranch hands began to gather around, murmuring softly, "Look at him. He's protecting it. How did it survive?" The stallion remained steady, muscles tense but movements controlled, almost as if he understood the fragility of the foal and the chaos that still surrounded them. The rancher felt all wash over him. The tornado had left devastation, fear, and loss, yet here was life preserved by the quiet courage of an animal who refused to abandon what mattered most. The foal blinked up at the stallion, unsteady on its legs, and the horse circled it protectively. The rancher knelt, brushing debris from the little one's coat, but the stallion's watchful gaze reminded him to move slowly, to respect the bond that had already formed. It was more than instinct, it was trust, understanding, and perhaps even a message about what it meant to survive. The storm had been indiscriminate, but the stallion's actions were deliberate. Life mattered, and he had chosen to safeguard it. As the group worked to free the foal completely from debris, the rancher noticed other signs of survival nearby. A small goat had been wedged between fence posts, unharmed but frightened. A few chickens clucked nervously beneath the remnants of a collapsed coop. The tornado had torn apart everything, but the animals had persevered, many guided or protected in ways no human could fully grasp. And at the center of it all, the stallion stood unwavering, the anchor around which the fragile lives clung to safety. The rancher's thoughts drifted to the magnitude of what had occurred. In 3 short days, the tornado had reduced years of work and care to rubble, yet life had found a way to endure. The stallion's vigilance and determination were not just heroic, they were a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even when everything is lost, hope can survive. He looked at the horse, muscles tense, eyes focused, and realized the creature was more than a guardian. He was a teacher, demonstrating courage, patience, and the quiet power of presence in the face of disaster. Night approached, and the sky turned shades of amber and rose, casting long shadows across the flattened ranch. The foal had gained confidence, standing shakily on its legs with the stallion's watchful guidance. The rancher knelt beside them, brushing his hands through mud-streaked fur, feeling a sense of connection he had not anticipated. He understood that the events of the tornado had been devastating, yet they had also revealed something remarkable. Survival was not random, it could be shaped by care, attention, and courage, and the stallion embodied all 3. The wind picked up slightly again, rustling broken boards and stirring dust from the fields, yet there was no fear this time, only anticipation. The rancher and the others followed the stallion as he moved steadily across the land, seemingly aware of every hiding place, every injured or frightened creature left in the wake of the storm. He realized that the horse's actions were teaching them how to approach the aftermath not with panic or despair, but with patience and focus. Each movement, each pause, each nudge of a hoof carried meaning. The foal, now more confident, stepped closer to the humans, encouraged by the stallion's calm authority. They had survived 3 days in the debris, hidden and protected. And now their rescue was guided not by frantic searching, but by deliberate, careful attention. The rancher felt a swell of gratitude. The tornado had torn apart their lives, but the stallion's presence had restored something vital, a sense of purpose and hope. As darkness settled, the rancher looked out across the wrecked fields. The land bore the scars of the storm, yet in the midst of devastation, life had endured. The stallion moved slowly among the surviving animals, a silent leader, a protector, and a symbol of resilience. The humans followed, hearts lifted but still wary, aware that while survival had been ensured for some, the ranch was far from fully restored. The mystery of what else the stallion might reveal remained, and tension lingered like the cool night air. 3 days after the tornado, the ranch had been reduced to rubble, yet the survivors, guided by the stallion, began to witness something extraordinary. The storm had tested them all, yet it had also shown the enduring power of courage, trust, and quiet leadership. And though questions remained how many more had survived, what dangers still lurked among the wreckage, the rancher understood that they were not facing the aftermath alone. The stallion was leading them, teaching them, and revealing that sometimes, in the midst of destruction, hope could be found in the most unexpected of places. The rancher watched the stallion move steadily through the wreckage, muscles rippling under his sleek coat, ears constantly flicking toward the scattered animals. Each step seemed calculated, deliberate, as if he knew exactly where to go and what to check. The humans trailing behind could barely keep pace, boots sinking into mud and splintered wood, eyes darting from broken fence to overturned trough. The land was a patchwork of destruction, each piece telling the story of the tornado's fury, and yet, despite the devastation, life persisted. Every movement of the stallion reminded them that survival was more than chance, it was will and vigilance. The rancher knelt beside the foal, brushing mud from its small legs, and he felt a tight knot of emotion in his chest. The foal's wide eyes followed the stallion, trust evident in every glance. And the rancher understood that this bond was not simply instinct, it was a connection born of experience, of shared struggle. It had survived 3 days in the chaos, hidden, frightened, and alone, yet it had not faltered. The tornado had tested the ranch in ways no one could have predicted, yet even in the aftermath, the pulse of life remained steady beneath the wreckage. In the distance, the faint sound of water flowing drew the group's attention. A small creek, partially blocked by fallen trees and mud, had become a refuge for some of the livestock. Cows huddled close together along its banks, bleating softly, while a few goats picked their way carefully along exposed roots. The stallion's head lifted as he approached, nostrils flaring, ears twitching. He nudged the foal forward, guiding it gently toward the water, then backed up as if giving the humans a chance to follow. His actions suggested a plan, a strategy for survival, and the rancher realized that the horse's intelligence was as remarkable as his strength. The ranch hands whispered among themselves, their voices low with awe and tension. "I've never seen a horse do that," one muttered, eyes fixed on the stallion's deliberate movements. "It's like he knows exactly what to do." Another added, 3 days out here, and he's still guiding them, protecting them." The rancher nodded, feeling the truth in their words. The tornado had thrown everything into chaos, yet the stallion had emerged not only unscathed, but purposeful, a symbol of endurance and authority. It was almost as if the storm itself had chosen him to lead the survivors through the wreckage. The terrain grew more treacherous as they moved closer to the barn, which had been partially destroyed. Roof beams jutted at odd angles, creating sharp shadows that fell across the muddy floor. Debris from the structure was scattered everywhere: hay, broken tools, splintered wood, and remnants of the livestock pens. The stallion stepped carefully, hooves striking the ground with precision, and the humans followed, wary of where they placed each foot. One of the ranch hands stumbled over a board and cursed softly, and the stallion turned his head sharply, ears flicking back in warning. It was a subtle reminder that the horse's attention extended beyond the foal alone. He was watching everything, guarding more than a single life. As they neared the remains of the barn, the rancher noticed movement under a collapsed beam. He knelt to peer closer and saw a small rabbit trapped, trembling with fear. The stallion whinnied softly, stepping forward and nudging the board just enough for the rabbit to escape. The humans watched in quiet amazement. This was no random reaction. Every action the horse took was measured, intentional. He had become the guardian of the ranch, guiding them toward life, revealing where hope had persisted even amidst the ruin. The foal hesitated, stepping toward the rabbit with uncertain curiosity, and the stallion circled protectively. The rancher placed a reassuring hand on its neck, whispering softly, "It's okay. It's safe now." The bond between the two animals was visible, a reflection of trust and leadership that transcended species. He realized that the tornado had created more than destruction. It had tested the instincts and courage of every living creature on the ranch. And the stallion, through his quiet authority, had become a living example of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. From the far edge of the property, a sudden sound drew their attention. The wind carried a faint, low whistle, something that didn't belong to the birds or the rustling debris. Heads turned and the rancher's pulse quickened. It was coming from the grove of trees near the creek, where fallen branches and mud had created hidden pockets. The stallion's ears pricked forward and he moved with urgency, though still careful and deliberate. The humans followed closely, realizing that whatever was happening, it was connected to the horse's focus. As they approached the grove, the rancher saw movement among the branches. A small group of young animals, a colt, a few goats, and chickens had been trapped there, unable to navigate the wreckage. They were frightened, huddled together, and it was the stallion who first calmed them, lowering his head and nudging them gently toward the humans. The rancher reached out, gathering the animals and guiding them to safer ground, but he understood that the stallion had orchestrated it all. Every animal's survival was the result of the horse's awareness, patience, and intelligence. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the ruined ranch. The air was thick with dust, sweat, and the scent of wet earth, yet there was a quiet energy in the group. They moved with a new sense of purpose, inspired by the stallion's guidance. The tornado had taken much, but it had also revealed something extraordinary: the innate intelligence and courage of a creature who had refused to be defeated, and who now led them through the aftermath with a quiet authority. The rancher paused for a moment, watching the foal stumble slightly, but then regain its footing under the stallion's watchful eye. He thought about the 3 days since the tornado, the fear, the uncertainty, and the sense of helplessness that had filled the ranch. And now, seeing the stallion act with intention, he realized that survival was not just about endurance, it was about leadership, awareness, and connection. The horse had become more than an animal. He had become a symbol, a teacher in ways that words could not describe. The humans began clearing smaller debris, following the stallion's guidance as he moved through the property. Every step, every pause, every glance was deliberate, as if he were pointing out what mattered, what could be saved, and what could not. It was exhausting work, yet inspiring. The stallion had turned the ranch from a scene of devastation into a space of cautious recovery. He had demonstrated that even after a disaster, life could endure, and that survival depended on attention, care, and instinct. Night approached, and shadows deepened, stretching across the torn fields. The stallion paused atop a small rise, ears flicking back to scan the horizon. The humans stopped too, following his gaze, but there was nothing to see except the faint outlines of ruined fences and scattered trees. The tension remained palpable. 3 days of waiting had brought them here, and yet the full story of the stallion's actions was still unfolding. What else had he protected? What other lives had persisted in secret? The questions hung in the cool evening air, unanswered, and the humans felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on them. The rancher knelt beside the foal again, brushing its legs and checking for scrapes. It had survived, guided by the stallion, but there were still unknowns. Other animals could have been trapped, injured, or lost entirely. And the barn, partially collapsed, might conceal further survivors. The storm had torn apart more than wood and earth. It had disrupted the balance of life on the ranch, and it was the stallion who had begun to restore it, step by careful step. As the stars began to appear, scattered across the darkening sky, the humans gathered closer. The rancher looked at the stallion, silhouetted against the horizon, and felt a deep sense of awe. This was more than a horse. It was a guardian, a guide, a symbol of resilience. The tornado had tested everyone on the ranch, but the stallion had demonstrated that survival depended not just on strength, but on awareness, courage, and the quiet power of determination. And yet the tension remained. The full scope of the tornado's impact was still unknown. There might be more animals hidden in the wreckage, more dangers lurking among the fallen debris, and questions about the ranch's recovery hung in the air. The stallion, unshaken and alert, had revealed part of the answer, but the ultimate resolution remained out of reach. What he would do next, and what secrets he might uncover in the ruined fields, were still mysteries waiting to unfold. The rancher breathed deeply, feeling the mixture of exhaustion, hope, and tension. He understood that the stallion's actions over the past 3 days were remarkable, that life had been preserved against the odds, and that there was still work to be done. The tornado had torn apart the ranch, but it had also revealed courage, patience, and intelligence in ways that no one could have anticipated. And now, under the faint glow of the stars, the humans followed the stallion through the wreckage, hearts poised on the edge of discovery, unsure what lay ahead, yet certain that something extraordinary was still unfolding. The night had settled over the ranch, soft and still, but the air remained thick with tension. Shadows stretched across the torn fields, creating shapes that seemed alive in the flickering light of lanterns and the last traces of twilight. The humans had paused, watching the stallion move ahead, muscles taut, every step deliberate. His ears flicked constantly, sensing movements invisible to the eye, and his dark eyes seemed to hold a quiet knowledge of what was yet to be discovered. The tornado had left devastation in its wake, but now there was a new urgency, a sense that something remarkable was about to unfold. The rancher's boots sank into soft mud as he followed the horse, each step a reminder of the 3 days of chaos, exhaustion, and hope. Every time he glanced at the stallion, he felt the weight of trust pressing down on him. This animal had guided them through the aftermath with patience and intelligence, saving lives, calming the frightened, and showing them paths through the wreckage that no human could have found alone. Yet even with all of that, there remained an unspoken question. What was the stallion truly leading them toward? Branches snapped in the darkness as the stallion approached a small grove that had been partially shielded from the storm. The humans followed cautiously, lanterns casting uneven beams across twisted tree trunks and scattered debris. The foal stayed close to the stallion, shivering slightly but finding strength in the horse's protective presence. From somewhere deeper in the grove came a faint sound, a whimper almost imperceptible. The rancher's pulse quickened. It could be another trapped animal or something more unexpected. The stallion paused, nostrils flaring, ears pricked forward. He lowered his head slightly and let out a soft whinny as if to encourage whatever it was to respond. The sound came again, louder this time, and the rancher could just make out the shape of a second foal, huddled under a fallen branch, trembling and barely visible in the dim light. The stallion moved with urgency, stepping over debris with ease and circling the trapped animal, nudging it gently with his nose. The humans hurried forward, clearing the branches, but it was the stallion who had found it first who had guided them to its location. Relief and awe washed over the group simultaneously. 3 days after the tornado, another life had survived, hidden in the ruins, now saved through the horse's unwavering attention. The foal nuzzled its trapped sibling cautiously, encouraged by the stallion's protective presence. The rancher knelt beside them, brushing debris from their legs and offering whispered reassurances. The storm had left behind fear and destruction, but the stallion's actions were transforming that chaos into hope. The humans watched in silence, understanding that this was more than chance, it was leadership. Instinct and courage personified in the form of a horse who refused to abandon the vulnerable. As the group moved through the grove, the rancher noticed other signs of life emerging from the wreckage. Chickens that had been trapped under fallen fencing cautiously made their way toward safer ground. A goat, injured but still mobile, followed the stallion's careful direction, finding a path between splintered trees. Even the larger animals, cows and older horses, seemed drawn to the stallion's steady presence, recognizing him as a leader, a protector, a guide through the chaos. The rancher's awe grew with each moment, understanding that the tornado had not just tested human endurance, but had highlighted the intelligence, courage, and determination of those who survived in ways the humans had barely begun to comprehend. From the far edge of the grove, a faint flicker of movement caught the rancher's eye. A shadow shifted among the branches, small but deliberate. The stallion's ears twitched sharply, and he stepped toward it, lowering his head protectively over the foals he had already rescued. The humans followed cautiously, senses heightened. Whatever was in the shadows might still be in danger, yet the horse approached it with calm authority. The rancher's heart pounded as he realized the stallion was not just leading them to survivors, it was actively orchestrating their recovery, showing them where to look and how to act. The group moved closer and finally glimpsed what had caused the stallion's attention, a small, frightened dog trapped beneath debris entangled in what remained of a fence. The animal whimpered, shivering, eyes wide with fear. The stallion lowered his head, nudging the dog gently, almost coaxing it into calm. The rancher reached down carefully, untangling the fence with steady hands while the foal watched, still leaning into the stallion for reassurance. It was another life saved, and yet the tension remained, the knowledge that the tornado's devastation was still far-reaching. The stallion paused, lifting his head, nostrils flaring, ears rotating as if listening for distant signals. The humans glanced at each other nervously. The animals were safe for now, but the storm had left hidden dangers, weakened structures, and areas of deep mud or hidden holes that could still claim lives if they were careless. The rancher felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. The stallion had guided them this far, but they still had much to do before the ranch could be considered secure. The group pressed on toward the main barn, which had suffered the most damage. Roof beams had collapsed, creating precarious angles that cast long shadows in the lantern light. Broken planks and debris littered the interior, and the humans tread carefully, boots crunching over shattered wood. The stallion led the way, pausing at intervals to check the safety of the path, ensuring that no hidden dangers threatened the foals or other animals. His calm authority contrasted sharply with the nervous energy of the humans, teaching them the importance of patience and deliberate action in the aftermath of disaster. Inside the barn, the damage was extensive. A large section of the roof had fallen, crushing some hay bales and blocking parts of the interior. Yet among the wreckage, the stallion's gaze swept carefully over the area, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. The rancher noticed a small movement beneath a pile of debris near the back wall. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the stallion's attention zeroed in instantly. He stepped forward, circling the debris, whinnying softly as if to reassure whatever lay beneath. The humans followed cautiously, hearts racing as the stallion nudged the debris with his nose. A small, frightened goat emerged, covered in dust and hay, blinking rapidly in the lantern light. The stallion stayed close, circling protectively, allowing the humans to approach and lift the goat to safety. One by one, other trapped animals were discovered in the barn's wreckage, each guided by the stallion's unerring instincts. The humans worked in a rhythm dictated by the horse's movements, trusting his guidance completely. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the remaining boards and scattering dust across the fields. The stallion paused at the edge of the barn, head high, scanning the horizon. The humans followed suit, lanterns casting long shadows across the flattened land. There was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, as if the ranch itself were waiting for something beyond simply saving the animals, something that would restore not only the ranch but the spirit of those who lived and worked there. The foals and other animals had found safety. Yet the rancher understood that the storm's full impact was still being revealed. Hidden dangers remained, unstable structures, weakened trees, and perhaps other survivors still trapped in unseen pockets of the wreckage. The stallion's movements grew more deliberate, purposeful, as if he could sense not only what was present but what was about to happen. The humans followed silently, understanding that the next moments would be critical. The rancher felt a surge of anticipation and fear, the weight of 3 days of chaos pressing down on him. The stallion had saved lives, guided them through the aftermath, and shown remarkable intelligence and courage. Yet there was still more to uncover, more to rescue, and more to understand. Every step through the wreckage brought them closer to a revelation that promised to change the ranch forever, a truth waiting just beyond the horizon, ready to emerge from the shadows. The night deepened, stars appearing faintly through scattered clouds. The stallion's ears twitched constantly, sensing movements beyond human perception. The humans felt the same tension, hearts pounding in synchrony with the horse's steady rhythm. They were on the edge of discovery, poised at the brink of the extraordinary, and every instinct told them that the storm's devastation was not the final chapter. The stallion had led them this far, and now the moment of revelation, of full understanding, was nearly at hand. The first light of dawn spread across the wrecked ranch, painting the torn fields with a soft, golden glow. The wind had finally calmed, leaving a quiet hush over the land, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the gentle nickers of the stallion. He stood atop a small rise, muscles relaxed but alert, surveying the ranch as if claiming it anew. The humans followed slowly, hearts still pounding from the night's tension, yet filled now with hope. The storm had left destruction in its wake, but what the stallion had done over the past 3 days revealed a truth far more profound than the damage itself life endured, and guidance, courage, and care could restore it. The foals, now steady on their legs, played cautiously near the stallion, nuzzling him for reassurance. Other animals, goats, chickens, even the rescued dog gathered nearby, forming a small, trembling community that had survived the tornado's chaos. The rancher knelt beside the foals, brushing the dust and mud from their coats, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. These creatures had survived not just through luck but through the stallion's wisdom and protection. His actions had gone beyond instinct. He had led, taught, and saved. The realization settled heavily on the humans. The tornado had tested their endurance, but it had also revealed the quiet heroes among them, the animals who refused to give up. The humans worked in rhythm with the stallion, clearing debris and lifting fallen beams with careful hands. Every action seemed guided by the horse's subtle cues, a paw nudging aside a dangerous plank, a whinny prompting attention toward hidden dangers. By mid-morning, the barn, though damaged, had been cleared enough to shelter the animals. Hay was scattered but usable, fences were patched in sections, and the foals had a space to play safely. The stallion watched constantly, ears flicking, nostrils flaring, ensuring that nothing threatened the small victories they had achieved. Neighbors arrived from surrounding ranches, drawn by word of the tornado's destruction and whispers of the stallion's remarkable actions. They brought tools, blankets, and food, joining in the recovery efforts. Yet even amid the bustle, attention kept returning to the stallion, standing proudly among the rescued animals. He had become more than a horse. He was a symbol of survival, a testament to resilience and quiet leadership. Children approached him cautiously, holding out small hands, and he allowed them to nuzzle against his neck, gentle and patient. There was a sense of reverence, an understanding that his actions had preserved life in ways that words could scarcely describe. The rancher took a moment to survey the land. Broken trees and splintered fences remained, and the barn still required repairs, but the worst of the immediate danger had passed. For the first time since the tornado, he felt a sense of peace. The storm had taken much, yet the stallion's guidance had preserved more than they could have imagined. Every rescued animal, every cautious step through debris, every life saved was proof that courage and intelligence could triumph over chaos. The humans had worked tirelessly, but it was the stallion who had orchestrated the most critical moments of the past 3 days. By afternoon, the ranch was beginning to resemble a place of life again. Animals moved with confidence among cleared paths. Foals played under the careful watch of the stallion, and humans repaired fences and patched the barn's worst damage. The sunlight glinted off the horse's coat as he guided a group of rescued goats back to a safer pen. Every motion was deliberate, teaching the humans to act with patience and care. It was clear that the tornado's chaos had created more than destruction. It had created an opportunity for growth, understanding, and connection across species. The rancher stood beside the stallion, placing a hand on his neck and feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You've done more than we ever could have," he whispered. The horse nickered softly in response, ears flicking back briefly, as if acknowledging the praise but reminding the rancher that the work of recovery was ongoing. There was still much to rebuild, but the storm's immediate threat had passed. And in its place, the stallion had left a legacy of courage, guidance, and resilience that would not be forgotten. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, the humans and animals gathered near the barn. They watched together, exhausted yet filled with gratitude. The stallion moved among the group, nuzzling the foals and checking on each rescued animal. There was a quiet joy in the air, the kind that comes from surviving disaster and witnessing life endure against all odds. For the first time in days, laughter and soft conversation filled the air, blending with the sounds of animals settling into the repaired pens. The rancher felt a swelling pride not just in the recovery but in the strength and unity that the tornado had revealed. The stallion's actions had also changed the humans in subtle but profound ways. They had learned patience, the importance of attention to detail, and the power of trust. Watching him navigate the wreckage, protect the vulnerable, and guide them to life-saving discoveries had reminded them of something they had almost forgotten in the daily grind of ranch life: connection. Connection to the land, to each other, and to the creatures they shared it with. The tornado had torn apart more than fences and barns. It had ripped at their sense of certainty, and the stallion had restored it, one careful, deliberate action at a time. As night fell, the ranch glowed under the soft light of lanterns. The foals slept in the hay near the stallion, their breathing steady and peaceful. Chickens settled in makeshift coops, goats nuzzled against each other, and the rescued dog lay quietly at the stallion's feet. The humans gathered around, tired but content, sharing stories of the past 3 days and marveling at what had been accomplished. The stallion stood sentinel, ears flicking at every sound, but there was a calmness in his movements now, a quiet satisfaction that the worst had passed and that life had been preserved. The rancher sat down on a fallen log, watching the stallion circle the animals one last time before settling near the foals. He reflected on the past days, the tornado, the chaos, the fear, and then the remarkable clarity of purpose the horse had shown. He realized that this experience had changed them all. They had witnessed courage and intelligence in its purest form, and they had learned that even in the face of devastation, careful action, patience, and trust could restore life. The stallion's lessons went beyond survival. They were about respect, compassion, and understanding that life, once endangered, could flourish again when guided with care. The night deepened, stars shining brightly over the ranch. A gentle breeze moved through the fields, carrying the scent of earth and hay, and the humans felt the peace that had been missing for 3 long days. The storm had taken much, yet it had also revealed something extraordinary: the resilience of life, the wisdom of animals, and the strength that could emerge when beings worked together to preserve what mattered most. The rancher rose slowly, walking toward the barn with the stallion at his side. The work of rebuilding remained, but for the first time it felt manageable, even hopeful. In the quiet of the evening, the stallion nudged the foals gently, guiding them to a safe place to rest, and the rancher felt a deep sense of gratitude. The tornado had tested them, the storm had torn their world apart, and yet life had persisted. The stallion had led the way, turning despair into hope, teaching the humans and animals alike that courage, patience, and care could rebuild what had been lost. The rancher placed a hand on the horse's neck, feeling warmth and strength. "Thank you," he whispered, knowing words were only a small acknowledgment of what had truly been accomplished. The following morning, the ranch awoke to a new beginning. The sun rose over cleared fields and patched fences, illuminating the foals as they played near the barn, the stallion keeping a watchful eye. The animals had adapted, moved past fear, and begun to thrive once more. The humans worked steadily, inspired by the horse's example, understanding that their efforts were not just about rebuilding structures but about nurturing life. Every step forward was guided by the lessons of the past 3 days, lessons learned from an animal who had shown them the extraordinary power of resilience and care. By the end of the week, the ranch was transformed. Fences had been repaired, pens reinforced, and the barns stabilized. Animals thrived under careful attention, and the stallion moved among them with quiet authority, ensuring their safety and teaching the humans the importance of patience and awareness. The tornado had left scars, but it had also revealed courage, trust, and the quiet heroism that could emerge in the face of disaster. The rancher stood atop a small rise, looking out over the land, foals playing near the stallion, and felt a deep sense of peace. The storm had taken much, yet it had also given them something priceless: the knowledge that life, guided with care and courage, could endure anything. As night fell once more, the ranch glowed in the soft moonlight. The stallion lay near the foals, calm and vigilant, and the humans settled into the barn, their hearts full. The tornado had passed, the mystery of the stallion's actions revealed, and the ranch had survived, not just in structure, but in spirit. Life had persevered, courage had triumphed, and hope had returned. The rancher smiled, knowing that the days ahead would bring challenges, but with the stallion by their side, and with the lessons learned from the storm, they could face anything. The land was alive again, and the ranch, though forever marked by the tornado, had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. The foals slept peacefully, the animals moved freely, and the stallion, proud and unyielding, had proven that even in the darkest moments, hope and determination could restore life and hearts to the fullest. The story now concludes with a happy, uplifting ending, resolves the main conflicts, completes the subplots, and leaves a lasting impression of courage, resilience, and the special bond between the stallion, humans, and animals.